And there you have it. The nemesis of every singer in any genre is that transition we all have to negotiate through the register change. Now, the register change itself is both physiological, so that means it's a fact of our body. It's the way our body is designed that we have to negotiate this, and it's also acoustic. There are resonators inside, and they have to transition along with the frequency that we're singing. So what this means is that every sound we make is the result of a relationship, a three-way relationship between the air, or the air management, if you will, the vibration of your vocal folds, how they're vibrating, and the resonators, the open air spaces. That three-way relationship is dictating everything. So our behaviors surrounding those three are going to equal either a good vocal take or a bad vocal take, a smooth transition or a rough one. When you hear a huge change in behavior like that, usually what that means is a disagreement. It's a disagreement between one of those three. When we are singing high notes, the vocal folds are thin. That's the physiology. That's a fact of their construction, if you will. Like guitar strings, the higher we sing, the thinner the vocal folds are, which means the lower we sing, the thicker the vocal folds are. Thinner folds require less air pressure. Thicker folds require more air pressure. A low note requires a bigger resonating space. High notes require a smaller resonating space. Big resonating spaces are down here, your windpipe and your lower pharynx here. Oral cavity, they're all fairly big air spaces in which to resonate. And the sinal cavities and the upper, what's called the nasal pharynx, the area of your throat behind the nose there, are small spaces. So the sensation when we sing is that we feel the resonance migrating. Low notes, ah. Low notes will be down here, and as we sing higher, high notes will be here. So the extreme lows and extreme highs, not too hard. Easy to negotiate. It's all that juicy stuff in the middle where we get into having to really deal with blending and mixing and coordinating the transition. That middle weight is where we're vulnerable as singers, and guess what? That's where all the best singing is. The listener perks up because they sense we're in that challenge zone. We're in that vulnerable spot of our voice. Typically, we reserve those kind of tones in our life is for when we're being sensitive. Ooh, when we're talking around up here, instead of down here all the time, or up here all the time, which is fairly locked in as a sort of a cultural safe zone. But when we're in the middle, that means we're a little off guard, a little vulnerable, and therefore authentic. And listeners perk up when we reach that zone. You'll notice every pop song for sure hangs around in that area for good reason, as that's where the interest comes in. That's where the emotion gets raw. So our job as singers is to negotiate that area really smoothly so we don't have to use too much bandwidth, meaning too much thought, in order to negotiate through there. Because no song ever written is about that area, or even about singing. Shouldn't say that. Some are written about singing, but not many. So the point here is that we use exercises, we singers use exercises to give us a neutral or sort of emotion-free zone or vehicle in which to work on this coordination. What's going on is your fold will gradually your fold is gradually increasing its mass as it's also gradually decreasing its tension. That's what's adjusting the pitch inside. But as that's happening, the air that's feeding it, the air pressure we're creating, should be, in ideal circumstance, balanced or proportionate to the need to trigger that overtone. That fundamental. The overtones are what happen afterwards with the resonance. And so that first initiation, and that occurs in our brain, in our thoughts. What pitch do you want to sing? What sound or timbre do you want? And what volume? Those three factors greatly affect where your voice transitions. If I sing these same pitches at a much louder volume, there's no transition needed. So my folds needed to be thick to achieve that kind of volume on this A, and in doing so, they never needed to transition out of a thick mass. But as I reduce the volume, the same pitch, the same frequency, requires my folds be thin, requires the air be reduced, backed off, and is going to select a different resonator in which to enhance the sound. So these three things are spinning all the time. So we singers have to be very clear on our targets. What pitch? That's an obvious one. The other two are not. What volume will you maintain? And what timbre, what tone will you use? That brings me to the easiest way to access a sort of passageway through. The tone or timbre of your voice is created by these open spaces. The windpipe is a rigid space, so that's kind of fixed into your DNA blueprint. It is what it is. Same thing with the sinal cavities. Those are locked by the shape and openings in your skull. They're not moving. And so the pharynx, this area of throat just above your larynx, is divided into three. This is the laryngeal pharynx, the oral pharynx, and the nasal pharynx, just behind the nose there. Those are adjustable, highly adjustable, and that's really good. That's why we can make such a myriad of sounds. And it's also why people listen to us with that same sort of decoding. It's not often what we say to people, it's how we say it to people. So our tone of voice can be both insulting or inviting. And so we want to manage the tone as well as the dynamics when we sing, and of course be accurate in pitch. So the easiest way, I believe, to get through that passage as a sort of learning experience is to come from above and travel through it. So a descending scale, like the one I've been playing, doesn't have to be musically challenging, but I want you to start, establish your voice before the passaggio, before the voice has to change, above it. So for males, generally that's around A here. E is a safe bet for females, or D. Anywhere where you feel you are squarely above that change, start there. And what we're going to do is open the resonator up very wide. And the way we do that is by making a very woofy or yawn-like sound, very hooty sound. On the vowel oo is the best one to work with. And what I want you to be very mindful of is that you maintain both the same volume and the same quality or timbre of voice. That's critical. Your brain is hardwired to stay in any relationship that's working. It fears change. And so therefore we tend to stay with relationships well after they're not working for us, but just because it's the sort of devil you know. So typically you may hear right here where I'm speaking, I've locked my voice into that first relationship. And I'm purposely not calling it head register and chest register. I'm calling them relationships because technically the registers are labels that we use to define areas of our voice. And I think they block us in. I think the label itself does more harm than good. So I'm always going to say relationships because that keeps suggesting that it could be ever-changing. It's borderless. As anybody in a long-term relationship knows, every day is a new experience. And so maintaining the same volume will dictate that I must change during the transition of pitches. Ooh, versus so the note really is, my folds are having a hard time sustaining the vibration. I've kept them thin by asking them to stay in the same relationship that I started the scale in. And the same thing would occur if I took it up. You'll hear the term pulling chest voice or shouting or yelling or whatever is just synonymous with staying in that first relationship. Oh, the voice has to get louder in order to stay in that first relationship. And this is what we want to avoid as agile singers, because we want to embrace that middle for the reasons I stated at the beginning. And you can always default back to any volume or any tone you want, but first we want to find the common denominator. What is a great timbre and a volume setting that would allow you a transition? Typically, it'll be at a low volume. Typically, it'll be at that deep, hooty or yawn-like sound. So I'll give you another sample again. Females. If you maintain the same volume, you will necessitate a change. If you allow the volume or the timbre to change, you're staying locked in that first relationship. And again, it's a very simple scale. We're just dropping down 8 notes. And that's not the magic. Singing the scale isn't the magic. It's your attention to detail. The pitches should be accurate, of course, but the timbre, choosing that tone and choosing a volume, one you start with, it should be comfortable. As you change the volume or change the tone of the voice, that point in which your voice changes moves. As I said before, the louder you sing, the higher up that break will be, the transition will be. The lower the volume, the lower that will be. Often when we're performing, we kind of scoot around this issue by using dynamics, by using timbre changes to avoid this kind of black hole right in the center of our voice. If that coincides with the lyric, if we're matching the sentiment with the tone and dynamics, we look brilliant. It's excellent. But when it doesn't, we look strained and struggled. It becomes obvious that we're not in control of our message that we're projecting, that we're really just kind of preoccupied by not making any mistakes vocally. So the listener's going to step back a second. They know we're not really, processing any emotions at that point. So they're going to wait and sort of withhold their opinion of our singing. That's, after one of those performances, you may hear something like, wow, you got a good voice, or good skill, or you exhibit great technique. But they won't give you that coveted, when you sing, my heart just skips a beat. That's the stuff we're looking for. So the transition itself is physiological and acoustic. You're handing off the sound we're producing from one resonator to another. What makes the crack is disagreement. Disagreement either between the air you're sending up, the thickness of the fold that you're requiring. When it's abrupt, that means your folds are making a really quick change, and or you're locking a resonator in place. The posture of your throat is not budging, so therefore it can no longer accommodate the different frequencies or pitches that you're singing. So keep practicing this with the sound that works, which my recommendation is that deep one, and then slowly start to change out of that sound, the one I began with. Something like that will give you a little more exposure. It's going to take a little more coordination. And as you get more bright with the tone and louder, you're going to be more vulnerable to cracking. It's going to require coordination. So establish it at a comfortable level, low volume first, with that open timbre, with that woofy sound, and then graduate it slowly from there. It takes time to develop, but it's well worth your attention.